Hi there, everybody. Welcome to today's live broadcast of Asymmetric Habits with myself, Jerry Hanley from Viking Performance Training, and of course, my good buddy, Jonathan Pishner of Apex Counseling, both of us located here in Morgantown, West Virginia. So, today's topic is about self care, and it's also about watching TV and scrolling the phone. And I mean, JP brought this one straight up to me a few months ago when we were discussing topics for the show. And I was like, we have to do is watching TV or scrolling through your phone the same as self care. And these are topics that, I mean, if you are a frequent listener to the show, all of this comes up a lot, actually, like self-care, making sure you're finding ways to recharge yourself in ways that actually make you feel rejuvenated. And then also how things such as scrolling through the phone on social media, for example, can, definitely have their places, but it also, other ways can also cause a lot more harm than the good or relaxing we're looking for. So I'm excited to hear how in-depth JP wants to go with this. And brother, go ahead and take it off, man.
Well, yeah, this is what I've been excited for because it's it's one of those things where using television or using social media is very, very easy to have enter your relaxation time, but it's sometimes not always the best thing. And what sadly we're lacking is really a good, clear way to explain to people how to know when it's time to use those things because one of the things that has not been done yet, because a lot of this today is going to be based off of my own clinical observation, but I don't know that very much research has been done on certain aspects of what we're going to talk about. I know there's a little bit, but there's aspects of using TV, social media, and other screen related things. We can throw video games in the mix too.
Oh yeah.
uh, yeah, and whether or not they are proper self-care or if they're somehow less good. So let me go ahead and jump into the first part of this, the very easy, quick, and brief summary. If used correctly, they're fine.
Mhm.
Uh, in many ways, there's a lot of things that you can use for self-care that, if overused, are actively dangerous or destructive. Like, I do the whole ice bath, cold plunge thing. For 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that's great. If you try to stay in that thing for 2 hours, there's a whole set of problems you can start to have because of that. You know, I'm not against folks having a beer or something for a little bit of relaxation, but 15 of the things is maybe a problem. Television and social media live in that area where they can be used properly, but they can be used improperly, and sadly they can be used improperly quite easily because it is in the interest of the people who run these things to have you overconsumed, and so they're in many ways designed to be overconsumed. So hopefully today we can give some people some ideas on how to consume them properly and at the right time so that they can actually be self-care, because if you use them right, they're terrific.
Mhm.
They're just designed to be hard to use right.
It, that's so true. That designation part of it. I mean, yeah, so self care, like to be very clear on this for the listeners, and we're talking about something that's not simply something that's say like enjoyable, but also something that ideally recharges you, refreshes you, and what else? Like, what else would you put into the definition of good full self care?
Uh, you know, honestly, the things that I'd put it as two things: a thing that temporarily separates you from the difficulties of your life,
Hmm.
and that puts your nervous system into the state it needs to be in for rejuvenation. If it's got those two things, it's proper self care, which means proper self care can be almost anything from essential oils to watching some TV to getting a massage to exercising, all kinds of stuff. If it has separates you from your problems temporarily and puts your nervous system into a rejuvenative state, it's self care.
So I had right here on my notepad already before we went in at turning off versus recharging, and you used almost those exact two phrases when it came down to it. So would you say there's a like kind of a well, actually, this is one of the things that I'm actually really interested to find out about or go over in this talk is those differences in some of the like specifics or semantics that how people react to watching TV or scrolling through the phone is when they're doing it in moments or when they're just seeking to turn off, in essence, like a turn off from what's constantly on their mind, their main stresses, whatever it may be, versus the choices they make when they're looking to be more recharged. Like, I'm gonna oversimplify this, but if I was to take, if I was to place like a bet, I would say a lot of times, say during the week, people look to turn off a little bit more. Just like when they get home from work, for example, if they have a typical Monday through Friday type of schedule, and the weekend is when people might be thinking a little bit more like recharging, or at least if they were actually thinking about what do I want. I feel like that was a simple way, but I'm a pattern guy, so I'm almost wondering if that would be a case. Like work day's done, let me shut off for a little while versus okay, it's Saturday, Sunday. What do I want to do now to recharge and be ready for the next week?
Actually, you should do both. I mean, think of your phone. Like sometimes you plug your phone in when it's at 20%, and you only have time to get it back up to 40% before you got to take it with you.
Great point.
On the
Yeah.
weekends, you can get it all the way back up to 100%. But really, self care should be rejuvenative, even if done during the work week, even if it's not, even if it doesn't get your battery all the way back up to 100%, because you might not have time for that, or you might not have the space to do the thing that would actually recover you the most. But yeah, absolutely. I would say that's probably a classical mistake of self care is to select things that only separate you from your difficulties without also being rejuvenative. Because then by the end of the week, even though you've kind of distracted yourself from, you get to Friday afternoon if you're a Monday through Friday person, and you just fried.
Hmm. Yep. Okay. Yeah, those are great points. So I want to go into a little bit deeper now. How earlier you mentioned how the things were watched, like both social media or watching TV, just like you said, they're designed to make us like over consume. And I mean, I said this is very like this is a definite. This is not an opinion. Like this definitely happens. When JP says that, like, no, this is what they're doing because you got to remember this is how these companies are making money. They're making
Sure.
money through by tracking how much time is spent on their devices. How many minutes are being watched. How and then because that also shows
How many ads they can show you in that time, like all of
exactly
that.
that lets them sell like ad minutes and everything. So it is one and same thing for video games. I said so these things are 100% designed to keep us watching or keep us scrolling, keep us playing, so that they can maximize that money. And it's funny because in a lot, well, it's not funny because the things that cause these effects are a lot of ways the things that also are improvements or make it more enjoyable. Like one we've actually mentioned offhand in a couple of broadcasts before are the music in video games. Like we said before, like that music is actually intended in a way to be almost perfect background music to let you keep doing something over like long term rather than how we think of music on the radio or Spotify where it has a start and an end and then we might want to switch it. Instead it's a music that's intended to just keep playing so we just lose track of time. A video game is a lose track of time type of phenomenon if it's done correctly. And then same thing with TVs. I mean, now like social media, constantly looking how to make itself more seamless, a more enjoyable experience. So you keep scrolling, even if you don't really care what the people you're looking at did 7 days ago, because you scrolled so much that now it's showing you random posts from the last 2 weeks. That's what it does. Or the explore pages or whatever it is that they are, like on TikTok or Instagram, where it's not even stuff you follow, but it just like it curates so much what you seem to like these days with the algorithms the technology has that it's like, okay, we think you'll like this, so check this out. And they've gotten so good at it that they're usually right.
Mhm.
I like it's like with it. So they're very, very good at continuing to find ways that will make you want to keep watching, want to keep playing, want to keep scrolling. And so that's where we need to be aware that we are in fact being like I said, it's getting better, but it's like,
Sure.
man, we need to take a break. We need to get better taking breaks.
All right, so let's talk about how to use it.
Yes.
Uh, so one of the things is going to be very individualized. This is the part I wish there was research on, and I don't know how you would meaningfully research it, but having done a lot of work around electronic media related addiction in my counseling work, uh, I've started to build kind of an idea that it seems like most different types of electronic media have a time where if you go just up to that time, it's rejuvenative, and then it has a falling off point where it starts to sap energy. So I'll give a good example with video games because that one seems to be consistent. Working with a lot of my folks that have suffered from any level of addiction to video gaming, there seems to be about a window between 1 hour to 2 hours for an awful lot of people where it's rejuvenative up to that point, and then if they play longer than that, it starts to sap energy, and they start to go back down to where they were or have less energy even than when they started. I am sure there's some brain mechanism at play that will one day be explained, but that just seems to be the pattern that's overall coming out. So if we take the same idea and apply it to other things, most people, because I started asking clients and friends and stuff about their felt sense as it relates to social media, that most people seem to have a much shorter window for rejuvenation for social media. It can seem to be rejuvenative because the distraction and the dopamine pop that it gives is useful, but it seems to be not more than a few minutes. If you scroll, especially like things that do short form video, which a lot of social media is drifting to short form video right now, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, especially the algorithmically based ones, they seem to start to sap people's energy relatively quickly. And I don't know if there's a meaningful difference between 3 minutes and 5 minutes for like most people, but certainly by the time people get to about 10 or 15, there seems to be an energy drop off. And once again, this is not yet clinically validated. This is just stuff I've been observing as an observer of human behavior, but it seems to be relatively consistent. So if a person's going to try and track for themselves, okay, what's my amount of time I can scroll on my phone and watch videos? What they would start trying to do is figure out like, okay, do I now have more energy than I did going in? If you do, great. That means you didn't overshoot and you did actually engage in some useful self-care. If you're just as wiped as when you went in, either you picked the wrong thing and you're not going to be able to get rejuvenation from what you just did, or you overshot and you ended up doing it too long. And because they're designed to be addictive, going too long is very, very easy. So each of these things seems to have windows. Now, one of the things I like about movies for self-care is they are the easiest to not overshoot on. Number one, there's a defined beginning and end point. Like there is no end on TikTok. You cannot possibly ever reach the end. When I turn on, I don't know, Top Gun or Iron Man, once the credits hit, the movie's over, and then I go and do something else. So it's very easy to have a defined end point. And because it's in a contiguous narrative, it doesn't seem to sap energy nearly as easily. So it's really easy to just kind of enjoy the experience and leave when it's time to leave. The thing with the short form videos, as we've talked about in other ones, so in other podcasts, so I won't belabor the point too much here. Rapid context changes are very, very energetically expensive in the brain. When I'm watching one movie the whole way through, there's no rapid context changes usually. So I'm getting slowly rejuvenated oftentimes throughout the experience while also being removed from my present day problems. So movies have a tendency to be pretty okay self-care as long as you select stuff that actually rejuvenates you personally.
Yeah.
And then TV lives somewhere in the middle because now that we can binge watch shows, people will have a tendency to over binge and come out non-rejuvenated. But even if you overshoot on television shows, that seems to be way better than overshooting on social media for sure.
you're covering so many of the things that I'm thinking at the exact same time. Because I was thinking the exact same thing. Where I feel like there's something about being drawn in deeper, which can takes time. Hence the longer story narrative of movies and shows, which because of that depth or whatever, because just has more attention to an actual story development, does seem to take you in longer, but like you said, it's less expensive, less draining than just the constant clips. Because I feel like when looking at the short form stuff, which I'm not a short form guy at all, uh, but when you go through that, it's usually either for like quick laughs or like quick shock. Like those seem to be like the just very simplified reasons that people look at them.
Or quick outrage.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Outrage with shock, yeah, exactly. But it's just those quick hits, and yeah, like the you see, I like seeing a cute animal video, like stuff like that. But after two or three, like I don't sit there and look for them. That's just not my style. But a lot of people will sit there and just go with the quick formats. Whereas I'm definitely a type of person where give me set of movies or limited edition series on Netflix or whatever. Well, 100% easily binge it. I do not have the same belief in science that you do that thinks it will someday be explained. I think they're not even going to try. But like, I would love to know that difference, that brain difference between longer narratives and short form, and see how they actually explain that. Now, the one other part that I like how you mentioned, I was going to give a little bit different term to it, was when you said like realize to use this, realize what you're doing and whether or not you come out refreshed. Because the individuality of this, in the end, it comes down to pattern recognition. Because there is no right or wrong. Like I said, when it comes to this, it's just like your style, your brain, your interests, what helps you feel energized and good to go, relax, versus what does just kind of keep you in a state of being worn out. And when it comes to all these, it is recognizing that pattern. Because what can make you feel like not energized what in one situation could be exactly what you need in a different one. So we're constantly kind of talking about that, trying to be aware of how things work out for you. And I feel like this is a big one for that.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people will sort of be able to spot their patterns reasonably quickly if they just pay attention to them. So, I'll give you a good example. I love movies. I find now because of my work, I've got to be more selective about what I watch and when, for purposes of rejuvenation. So certain movies like Schindler's List is an amazing movie, but being primarily a trauma therapist, I can't get to the end of my week, watch that, and that's not really a rejuvenative movie anyway. That's more to put you in contact with people's experiences. But because I've spent 5 days doing trauma therapy and then go watch that, that's actually even more draining on me because that's a literal non-separation from my work. That's actually an intensifying of my work. So I would have to be very, very selective about when I watched a movie like that versus watching any old whiz bang movie like Ghostbusters or something from the Marvel universe or things like that.
Hey,
It's
February 2nd right now, so I mean, it's a perfect day to go watch Groundhog Day.
Yes, and
Nobody,
that is actually one of my favorite movies.
nobody, nobody doesn't like Groundhog Day.
But yeah, so like I know that about me because just through a little bit of experimentation, like, oh yeah, okay, don't do it this way anymore. But other people will be different about what timing for movies and what kinds are rejuvenative to them versus what television shows, etc.
Exactly, and like there's so many. It's so much of it is about knowing your style, which I do think people are actually pretty good at. Like they know what type of shows they like, when they need to watch, when they quote unquote in their words need to watch certain shows, or I just want to watch like shows. But I think where a lot of people can improve it is in that actual like recognizing the patterns about like when is it not helping me, when is it too much, what's like the right amount. So something like when you mentioned like you said like the trauma therapist, the timing, just that made me think. how do you think actually using social media, video games, TV as like almost like a counterbalance? Like, would you say like that is that something that would actually be worth looking into or thinking about it or be common?
A counterbalance to what?
I mean, basically like your normal life or routine. So I said, like, I mean, a lot of people use it
Oh
as
yeah, yeah,
like
absolutely.
it's escape, but I wonder if like is there any higher value for people to do something that's specifically the opposite of like a lot of the problems or stresses they work with in a normal time?
Um, Probably within certain limitations. Because if you go too far outside of the things you can connect with, then like obviously you'll get nothing out of it. Um, so I think I will punt that question to the individual because I've never thought about it that way, and so I'd have to try it out myself. But that's a worthy question for people to try and explore. Like they're listening to this, like yeah, okay, if you're usually one way and you go and like in certain ways like explore a completely opposite experience, is that more rejuvenative? That's an interesting question.
So another part that I want to make sure to really go over with for people for like make how to make all this more positive experience is realize that like all of these things, well, I can't really speak for video games, uh, but definitely social media and even TV as well. Like these are things that with the technology that we have these days that does kind of help us watch it and help deliver it. It also makes it very possible to curate these things and curate it to your benefit. Like, I mean, just a fancy term of saying like you like shape the algorithm to you in essence. Like I said, the same technology with these things that is made to make us keep wanting to consume it, you have the power through the choices that you put into it, or maybe even actual blocks, etc., to make it more of what you actually want to do. So, let's say like we're talking about, there's whether it's humor or like rage or shock, whatever. If you don't want to see, like real life quote unquote news from the world, because like politics makes you mad, war makes you mad, like sickness makes you upset, like seeing like you just so let's as one example, you don't want to see like negative news, like you have all the power to go to your social media account and basically and like either block that stuff or turn it off or choose show me less of this, and it will over time improve that. So if there's something in what you do that you just don't like you can tell actually definitely is not helping you feel better, feel more relaxed about it, go and actively change it. Actively change these things. It's like being on Netflix and choosing your list or being like, I like this movie, or having different accounts for each family member, because then you actually each get your own list and it's not your horror supernatural like stuff mixed in with cooking shows in the same channel. you know
So tell you what, let me, because you're giving a great example of how to do this for the spreadsheet nerds, and there's some of them out there watching this. But let me fix this for the people like me who are never ever going to deep dive the settings of our Instagram account to fully optimize our experience. And I'll tell the lazy people like me how to do this. The lazy people like me will do it this way. We're going to pull out our phones. I'm going to punch up my Instagram search, and I have a bunch of stuff here. Let's see. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these with the idea of, if I push this button, I'm saying, show me more of this. If I ignore it, I'm saying, show me less of this. So I see a football clip up because I like watching football plays, even though I don't watch football a lot for some reason. People are weird, I guess. Uh, if I've clicked football link, I'm saying, show me more football plays. You can easily do it that way without having to deep dive things. And you do the same thing with YouTube, Facebook, heck, even the algorithms on Netflix and the other streaming services. When you pass something up, you're saying, don't show me this. When you click on it, you're saying, show me more. If you want to do it the lazy way, you can still optimize your algorithm experience that way over the course of time. there's a second thing I'd encourage people to do, which is, and this is hard. I acknowledge this is hard even for me, and I'm basically the teacher of this. There's stuff that is designed to look interesting, but is going to reduce your energy, either through making you upset, sad, angry, whatever. Don't click it. It doesn't matter how, like, you'll never believe what this person did. Don't click it. That is now no longer self-care. That is now an extra half percentage point of self-destruction. Even though it is very hard to remember that if you're trying to use social media to help yourself feel better and be distracted from some of your difficulties and get some self-care, clicking that's going to make it worse. Period. End of story.
Yep.
So I realize I'm kind of yelling into the void on that, because that is so very hard for people to apply, including myself. But I've got to at least let you know that that's one of the things you've got to do if you want to use social media for self-care.
I find that on Facebook, a lot of common sites or whatever that would come up with those types of articles, it wouldn't even necessarily be that. It would be explaining something deep hidden about some Marvel movie, for example. And knowing that I'm that's another one of my types of nerdery, is having to go in and look
14 things you didn't notice in Doctor Strange.
Exactly. And it's almost always a letdown. It's almost never something actually cool. And got frustrated enough to, it's after a few frustrations in a row, it'll go and it'll be they never show me this again. It's in a site that I went to almost every time is all of a sudden never being shown again to me. So I just did that to Screen Rant yesterday.
Oh,
quality sucks. But yeah, it's people don't realize how much those things, that quick thing, you said, click or not click on this, how much that actually does influence what it shows you. And so it's in a way you can make that just a better experience to go with it, for sure. So here's a question of more on one extreme. What do you think would be some signs for people to look at that may be saying, hey, have you considered taking a break from this, from whatever? I'll actually talking to Ashley, my wife, just a couple weeks ago. I was talking I don't even remember the actual I don't remember the actual context, but it definitely involved either end of the day, end of the night, or end of the week, just again hitting some serious brain fog patches and stuff like that. And she's the one who said, she's you're looking at screens all the time. It's because it's I do it even though I own a gym and work at a gym, a lot of what I do is the laptop, whether it's writing workouts or trying to get just administrative stuff done. And then whether I'm putting up posts on social media, you name it. And then even at home in the evening, it's really easy for me to be doing a little bit extra work or trying to catch up on this thing on the phone. And yeah, so it's just I've taken that and trying to do at least one step improvement of when I'm home in the evening, trying to not look at smaller personal screens. Even that I'm trying to make an improvement. Okay, when I'm home in the evening and there is not something that needs done, I'm going to try to not be looking at a smaller screen. And if there's a screen involved at all, it's going to be the bigger one, because I'm just with family. And it's more about being in that zone than it is about watching TV. But so anyway, that's just one small step. But for people going to hey, maybe I need to take a break from these things, what would be some of the signs to watch out for, saying, try to take a day off or a couple of days off or a weekend off, etc.?
I'm going to give you a real disappointing answer. If you're watching or listening to this, you need to look at less screens. That's the end of the.
Except for this broadcast. All the
you know what? I will help people at the expense of myself, including this podcast. So one of the things about, but now if you get more detailed about it, because we're talking about like, okay, how can you actually use screens well? It still goes back to, are you separating from stressors and are you rejuvenating? So like you even told a part of the story where it's like, ah, yes, I recognized that I was bringing my work screens home with me and therefore not separating. Now, instead of doing that, now I try and have screen family time, which I assume they're not looking at like your profit and loss reports. I assume y'all are watching something. Uh, so I swear to God, if you were like making the kids learn how to do spreadsheets on the big screen, I'm calling CPS on you.
I
Uh,
might, I might see if I can figure out how to do that for April Fools or something. Like
that would be hilarious.
the TV.
Put a camera in the corner because we all want to see that. You got to put that up. We'll all watch that one for self care.
Oh man.
Um, but like, so you made a change, and we're like, oh, if I do it this way, this is more rejuvenative, and it separates me from the stressors. That's actually exactly what you do. And then you keep refining that over the course of time because like then people will figure out, oh, wait, hold on, yeah, I separated from it a little bit, but actually if I turn off the TV and go for a hike, that's actually even more rejuvenative. uh, so to be honest, this is in many ways like step one for how to move towards better self-care. Step 5 or 9 or 27 will probably involve just watch less screens overall. Uh, but probably you have to master this step because most people, what they do is they overtax themselves through lack of self care. So by the time they get to Saturday, when they could go out and do something non screen related, they don't have the activation energy required to make that happen. They do have enough activation energy required to turn on Netflix, but not necessarily to get in the car and go out to the park for a nice 2 hour walk.
Mhm. That's a great point. Oh. Is there anything else you really want to go into on this?
No, I think just summarizing importantly, it is possible to use screens healthily, although very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Experiment a lot, and just with the two criteria: is it helping you separate from stressors? If you're watching outrage videos, it is not helping you separate from stressors. And is it in some way rejuvenating you? If it's doing those two things, you're working the right direction, and then just keep working further and further that direction. Like I kind of have a list now. I kind of know how long I can hang out on Instagram. Uh, in case you're curious, I don't have TikTok, which tells you a lot about my opinion of how well I can use TikTok. Uh, but like the more you do it, the more you'll have a profile of like, oh, here's how I can help myself with this, and here's how I should not use it.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, I got pretty much the same. Like recognize that pattern. Like when does it feel good? When does it not? Try to do more of what feels good. And just remember that your rejuvenating pattern is not someone else's. That's another one, just because like
You said something that is so important. I'm so glad you said it just that way. You have to check how you feel after you put it away because you're still getting the dopamine hit if you're looking at it. Once you put it down, that's when you check how you feel.
yes, good stuff there.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said it that way because I forgot to say that earlier.
Yeah. Well, all right, man. Good times, good talk. So, as always, those of you guys listening, thank you so much. So, hope this helps you all just find ways to like make little changes to improve your life in hopefully even bigger ways. We got the podcast. It is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify podcasts. So check it out, Asymmetric Habits. The new episodes come out every week. Like generally, if they were like this on a live broadcast, they come out usually within the next week. And then we have a big trove of archived episodes from a few years back that get released in between weeks, things like that. Like, in fact, I can actually tell you at the time of this recording, this morning we had an archived podcast was released on energy management.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So there's one there from 1 or 2 years ago. And so again, check that out, Asymmetric Habits. And again, on behalf of JP and myself, thank you guys. We'll catch you later.
See y'all.